Now that you know how inversions work, it's time we talk about using another system to indicate chords. If you're not sure about inversions yet, check out this video first. Numbers known as figured base can also be used to describe an inversion. With these, we simply add the intervals denoted by the numbers on top of the given note. In this example, the middle C note, together with the numbers 5, 3, will produce a C major chord with C, E, and G notes. This is because from the C note, a third on top will be an E, while a fifth on top will be a G. So the resulting chord consists of C, E, and G, a C major root position triad. Do remember that the figured base system here has two components, a base note and a set of figures. Just having one without the other wouldn't be sufficient to describe a chord, but with an exception that we'll talk about later. From the previous example, we can prove that the numbers 5, 3, together with the root notes of a chord, can produce a root position chord. So what about the inversions? I want you to think about the same C major chord but in the first inversion. What three notes do we need, and which note would have to be at the bottom? Then from the bottom note, what are the intervals formed with the other two notes? If you can answer those questions, you would have figured out that the numbers and the note required for a C major first inversion chord. The third of the chord, the E note, will have to be at the base. The other two notes will be C and G. The arrangement of the first inversion chord will be E, G, and C. From the base note E, the interval of a third forms a G note, while the interval of a sixth forms a C note. This proves that an E note with the figures 6, 3 forms a C major first inversion chord. It also shows that to form a first inversion triad using figured base, we use the third of the chord at the base, complemented by the figures 6, 3. Now think about a C major second inversion chord. Would the chord tones be the same? Which note would be at the bottom? If your answer is that the chord tones remain as C, E, and G, but with the G note at the base, you are right. All you need to do now is to measure the intervals from the G note to C and E respectively. You would ultimately get the intervals of a sixth and a fourth. This proves that a G note, together with the figures 6, 4, can form a second inversion C major chord. To create other second inversion chords, use the fifth of the chord at the base, complemented by the numbers 6, 4. One last thing to note is that the numbers 5, 3 are totally optional, unless when it's being used as part of a 1C5 progression. So if you're using the figured base system, a single note can actually denote a root position chord without any numbers. The number 3 in 6, 3 is also optional. By denoting the number 6, we will assume it is 6, 3 instead of 6, 4. This is just a common practice that has been established since the Baroque era. Now that you know how figured base works, give this exercise a go and see if you can identify these chords and relabel them using Roman numerals. Here's the answer. A D note without any figures suggests a D major root position chord, which is chord 1. An F sharp with the number 6 indicates D major first inversion, which is chord 1B. A G note with a 6 indicates an E minor first inversion, which is chord 2B. An E note on its own is the same chord, but in root position, chord 2. An A note with a 6-4 is a D major second inversion chord, chord 1C. An A note with a 5-3 is an A major root position, a chord 5. Did you notice that this is the only root position chord with the numbers 5-3? The figures are needed because it forms part of a 1C5 progression. Lastly, a D note without any numbers suggests a D major root position, chord 1 itself. Hey guys, my name is Kenneth and I help music teachers and students with everything related to ABRSM music theory. If you found my content helpful, hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my videos.